So we've recorded the whole song, the first version of it, right? And I didn't have any projects to put it on, really. And so it literally sat on the shelf.
Like, have you guys ever created something that you couldn't do anything with right away? Like, this was one of those songs. We had a great singer. We had a great song. Yolanda and I wrote it. We got to record it in Tuskegee. It sounds great. And it just has to sit year after year after year. In 2015 rolls around. I'm one of the executive producers for Dear Your Vet Shattered Fairy Tales, the book soundtrack, and Calvin Gets Put On. And this is the soundtrack of indie artists, and it's perfect. Great project.
Yo, so being on the soundtrack was cool, but recreating the song is what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to give it that old school sound.
That vinyl sound where, the knee would get on the record and those grooves and the music would just come alive.
And in the midst of recreating the song, I went ahead and did some research, and I came across DJ Cassidy. And surprisingly enough, he was doing the same thing that I was doing.
DJ Cassidy was producing these disco records using all of the same players from back in the day, from the Earth, Wind & Fires and the Patrice Rushen, Luther Vandross and Michael Jackson. It inspired me to redo this record.
So that's when I started getting back in the studio and recreating on this ASR-10 and MPC and just getting that vibe going. See, DJ Cassidy had a lot of availability to some of those musicians that created those records in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I just didn't have that bandwidth, but I did know some people who had been playing music instruments for years. So this is what I did.
So I went back to people who I knew who went to high school with me at OPRF, and I sent out a message to these players and anybody available, I'm trying to make this record. And Stephen Conkey from who right now plays with Toy Robots, a drummer, said, come on, man, send the track and I'll do it. And so I was so happy. So I sent the track to Chicago, and he went in the Toy Robots studio, and this is what happened.
Exhausting being this funky.
So Stephen sends the drums back and they're point on, right? All I really have to do is just, like he sends 12 tracks individually of all the different drum sounds. All I really have to do is just, put them in the Pro Tools session and, EQ some of the drums so that it blends in very well. And pretty much he nailed it. So now I gotta find a bass player to put on the track to give it that super warm feeling. So this is what I did.
I jumped on this website called Fiverr, where I was told that I could potentially find a bass player to gig on my song. So I went through a bunch of different bass players until I found one. This guy named Lee Ferguson, and he's a Christian Ministries bass player, and he's the real deal. So I contacted him. He said he'd do the gig, and in a matter of 3 days, he sent the bass line back for my song. So just like with the drum tracks, Ferguson sent the bass line, you take it and you plug it right into the session. Now let me be clear, just because you use Fiverr and you get people to play and gig on your songs, you still have to be a producer. You still have to make sure everything's right. So you take all of my new production, all of the new sounds, you mix it in with Conkey's drum session, Ferguson's bass session, then you gotta take the vocals, the 15-year vocals from Calvin, and you gotta plug them into the song. You gotta make sure that everything's mixed and it sounds right and everything's EQ'd. And then once you get a good mix, you send it to the post-production master, Larry Anthony, to master the song. And it turned out great. We got a full record now. And it's finally off the shelf and on JString's magical manifestation of the feel-good groove.